Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program. Tell your friends about it. Whether you're watching us on Facebook or on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe as well as follow us on Facebook so that you can get the notices as soon as this show goes live. Also, please make it a point to listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Apple iTunes, Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. We're available for audio download in many, many, many different places. Did I say places? I sure did. Anyway, also, hey, FBCgear.com. You guys already know it. It's the spot to go to get your Pro 2A gear, all sorts of Pro 2A swag. Every dollar that you spend there goes right into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. So you can support the Second Amendment. You can look good doing it. It's FBCgear.com. Spend a few shekels there and help us out. Anyway, let's move right along. So, you know, I studied finance in college. Yeah, I do deal with guns now, and I studied finance. But you know, one of the most important classes that you take is statistics. And one of the things that my statistics professor taught me very, very early on was that there are lies, there are damn lies, and then there are statistics. And we all know that in particular, the anti-gun community is really, really big on wanting to do quote-unquote studies. But the problem is that generally the studies that they put out there are, well, flawed. They start from a premise of they don't like guns, and they believe guns are an evil, and so therefore they want to prove that guns are an evil. And so all of their studies are designed in such a way in order to make it fit that narrative. Now, you're saying, well, how can that be? Well, it's like this. If I were to say, where if I'm at a university and I say, should the university spend more money on libraries or on physical education equipment? Well, if I do the poll outside of the library, I'm going to get probably different results than if I do the poll, for example, on the outside of the gym or the track, right? So in other words, how I go about collecting that data will affect the overall outcome of the study. Well, one such study that was done by a professor at the University of Alabama dealt with mass shootings. And they wanted to see since 1966, where were the most public mass shootings? And they wanted to show on record, kind of where exactly those shootings took place. Let's take a look at, I'm clever. I'm saying let's take a look, but I'm sure you guys can guess what his overall conclusion was.
The United States has the most mass shootings.
By far, the most public mass shootings.
You don't see murder on this kind of scale with this kind of frequency in any other advanced nation on earth.
Where'd that claim come from? Obama and everyone else base it on
a study done by University of Alabama professor Adam Lankford.
University of Alabama professor Adam Lankford.
This is Adam Lankford.
I studied 171 countries for more than 40 years, 1966 to 2012. And essentially the answer was, not surprisingly, the United States has by far the most public mass shooters.
His claim received coverage in hundreds of news stories, but all these people were misled by Lankford. Lankford's study claimed that since 1966, there were 90 mass public shooters in the United States, more than any other country. Lankford counted 202 shooters in the rest of the world. Lankford claimed complete data were available for 171 countries.
Now you see, complete data. And see, that obviously where the difference will lie. By the way, the gentleman that you saw there, I'm sure you guys all know him. That's John Lott. He's with the Crime Prevention Research Center. Now, when this study first came out, John Lott was all over the place and was explaining to people why this study was a problem. All right, so let's just go back real quick. So think about it. So we're talking about going back to 1966, right? Now, what countries were doing extensive, providing like ongoing providing daily news and media throughout the world the way in which the United States was. See, there's a problem with the way in which they do this data. And the problem is this, is that in the United States, we have not only did we have mass media, but it's been archived. I mean, we've developed a system where we can go back and we can look at all of the news reports going on in various different areas all across the country. But in 190 nations, in all of the nations around the world, how many of them do you think provide or have that same sort of follow through or that same sort of reporting that's available? Now, in that particular grouping, how many of them do you think report in English? You know, it's funny when John Lott actually asked them, he actually reached out to the researcher and said, when you did your study, can you provide all of your data? Professor Langford would not provide his data. Now, first of all, if a study is to be considered legitimate, that means that it has to be able to be duplicatable, meaning you have to be able to, if you did the same exact thing, you'd come out with the same exact results, right? Well, a few things. Number one, he wouldn't share the data, so you don't know exactly what data or data set he was using. The other thing was that he wouldn't talk about, well, what languages did you go through and translate? Because obviously you're going to need to go and do a lot of research, get a lot of information. You're going to need to be able to read foreign newspapers. Because once again, if we're going back to 1966, well, then you're going to have to, it's not like it's going to be available, translated already online. You're going to have to go and look that information up. But he wouldn't say how he did that. None of that information is provided. If you cannot say how you arrived at something, how you arrived at these numbers, then the numbers themselves are illegitimate. Now, the one thing that I will say, and this is why I very much appreciate our friend Mr. John Lott, was that he did not just point out the flaws in Mr. Langford's study. He went and he actually did the same exact study himself. He went and he did the research himself. And this is what he came up with.
So the think tank that I run, the Crime Prevention Research Center, researched it. Unlike Langford, we took a lot of time to find all the foreign cases we could. We even got translators to identify cases. Using the same definition of mass public shooters Langford used, 4 more people killed in a public place, not part of some other type of crime, we found that he grossly undercounted foreign attacks. We counted well over 3,000 shooters, at least 15 times more shooters as Langford claimed.
31% of total shooters, despite the fact that we only have 5% of the world's population.
Of the 86 countries where we have identified any mass public shootings occurring, the United States ranks 62nd. Norway, Finland, Switzerland, and Russia are European countries with significantly higher rates of murders from mass public shootings.
The explanation is firearm ownership rate.
When Langford's data are fixed, there is no relationship between gun ownership rates and mass public shooters.
Exactly. There's absolutely none. And by the way, all of his data, all of his information is all made available and all made public. Unlike Mr. Langford. You can go and look. You can look at the ones that he researched. You can look at the shootings that you can look at the information and see how Professor Lott or Dr. Lott or John Lott, how he arrived at the data that he had. Now, the interesting thing about it is, as one would wonder, as he put this information out there, how many major media outlets do you think actually picked up on it? Go ahead. No, I'll wait. Go ahead. Give me your guess. Yeah, almost none. Almost none. Fox News, which you of course would expect Fox News to, as well as a number of other pro-gun or pro-conservative media outlets picked it up. MSNBC? Nope. ABC? Nope. NBC? Nope. CBS? Nope. CNN? Nope. CNBC? Nope, 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 and nope. New York Times, LA Times, Sacramento Bee? Nope. Not one of them actually covered this information, which once again completely and utterly undermines their argument about mass shootings. You think President Obama, former President Obama came out and said, oh yeah, I was wrong about that? No, because they're not interested in the truth. Right? They're not interested in telling you what it is. And by the way, if you look in the link in the description, if you look for a link in the description of this video, there'll be a link to the entire video that was done by entire video that was done by John Stossel. Fantastic video you guys got to watch. But the point that I'm making here is, folks, is when they start talking about funding firearms research, things like the California's Gun Violence Research Center at UC Davis, or they start talking about taking federal dollars and putting it into funding gun violence research, they're not talking about actually funding real research. They're talking about funding propaganda. And that's all they're interested in funding. That's all they're interested in talking about. Because when you have someone who's done as many peer-reviewed studies as Mr. Lott has, and they tell you and they can demonstrate to you exactly why Mr. Lankford is full of shit, and they say absolutely nothing, well, then that just goes to tell you that they are full of shit as well. And that, my friends, is the rest of the story. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for liking and sharing this program and telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.